Is Reverend John on the line? Okay, if Reverend is not there, may I ask Matilda to open us in prayer, please? Matilda Osei is also one of our PhD candidates.
Okay.
Matilda, can you unmute and open us in prayer, please? Thank you.
Shall we pray? Shall we pray?
Yes, please.
Merciful Father, we thank you for a wonderful evening like this. We thank you for a special gathering where we are going to tap knowledge to add to knowledge. It is our prayer that we imbibe everything that the lecturer will teach us. May she give us the strength. Lord, give her the strength as well, so that she can also impart on us. And we know at the end of the day, the glory be unto your mighty name. We thank you in Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Matilda. Sorry for not warning you ahead of time, but thank you. That was a fantastic opening. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming once again to be part of our community, our Salt University College guest seminar. This month of May, which happens to be the Mental Health Awareness Month, we have a subject that is in line with the topic, with the month or the theme of the month. Our topic today is sound mind, sound body. A healthy mind is a healthy you. The Salt University College guest seminars bring together seasoned academicians, industry experts, and leaders to provide relevant perspectives on various issues of importance to our community. Now, let us have a few housekeeping matters. I want to thank each and every one of you once more for joining us. I want to acknowledge the presence of our president, Dr. Alabo, the vice president, Dr. Fatima Alabo, a few faculty members, Dr. Mauli. I see Dr. Mauli, I saw sometime ahead a few other faculty members. Welcome each and every one of you, and welcome to our student body. Salt University College has students who are master's candidates as well as PhD candidates who are studying in the programs, the various programs. And then to our invited guests from outside the community, welcome and thank you for coming. Our speaker has about 30 to 40 minutes. She will speak to us about the topic. And during the presentation, I would like us to post our questions in the chat boxes, and then all mics can stay muted. We would have her talk and then unmute. When it's time, you can ask your questions by raising your hands. Now, let me introduce our guest speaker for today, Dr. May Cullen Wolf Caesar. I like to add your name, Kabuki, because people would think you are some German or some Dutch.
I'm actually going to thank you for that.
Kabuki Cullen Wolf Caesar is a registered member of the Ghana Psychological Association, GPA. She is licensed to practice by the Ghana Psychology Council, GPC, and holds a PhD in clinical psychology. She has practiced privately for over a year and has considerable clinical, organizational, teaching, and consulting experience. She is the CEO of Equilinks Counseling and Psychological Services and the director of Teddy Bears Playhouse and Nursery School. May Wolf Caesar is a board member of the Review Tribunal of the Ghana Mental Health Authority, MHA, and is the Greater Accra Regional Representative of the Ghana Psychological Association, GPA. May is also consultant clinical psychologist for Ecobank Ghana Limited, Tema Parents Association School, Nsawam Orthopedic Training Center, Lex for Africa, UK, and many other corporations and educational institutions. And last but not least, Dr. May is a fellow Beacon. We both were in the Bury Girls together in the same year. I'm not going to age us, I'm not going to tell us. what year it was. But I would like to shout out Bipol Sohan.
Nyamenene.
So you have the floor, May. You are going to take us today through sound mind, sound body. A healthy mind is a healthy you. Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence and with your knowledge. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Akrisika. I'm embarrassed now with all that you said, but thank you very much for inviting me to talk about mental health. And I was saying earlier that I'm very passionate about the topic. And of course, this month being Mental Health Month or Purple Month, I think this is the best time to talk about a sound mind and a sound body. So I think I'll just go into it because you just gave me 30 to 40 minutes and it's quite a broad topic. But the first thing is a sound mind. So what's a sound mind? Many times when we talk about a sound mind or mental health, we tend to look at it in terms of mental illness. So mental health, we say mental illness. And that's what we are trying to move away from, because that term mental illness is what causes the stigmatization. So this month we want to talk about mental health, what it is and what it isn't. Okay, so we'll start with a little definition of mental health. I hope everybody can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Very
And I
clear.
can see what's written on them clearly. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. So mental health, unlike mental illness, refers to our cognitions, our emotions, our psychological and social well-being. Okay. That means that our mental health affects how we think, how we feel, how we behave in society. And then it also determines how we handle stresses, how we cope with life and the uncertainties of life, and how we even make choices, how we know right from wrong and do accordingly. And it's also essential for building relationships at work, at home, intimate, helps in building resilience. And of course, it increases our self-esteem. If we're feeling good about ourselves and we're able to build relationships, our self-esteem is going to be in a very positive place. So we can see that if it refers to how we think and feel and behave, then it means that it's something that actually starts from birth, from childhood, all the way through to old age, because we're always thinking, we're always feeling, and we're always behaving. So that is just a brief definition of mental health or a sound mind. So what is a sound mind, really? We're saying that mental health refers to how we think and feel and behave. So if we are able to think and create, if we're able to find meaning in what we're thinking about, and we're able to learn new things and experience joy in the process of learning. So like speaking to you, your students, I'm hoping that you experience joy in what you're doing. Even for those who are tutoring you, they experience joy in imparting knowledge. Then you can say that you have sound mental health, or you might have sound mental health. It's also our ability to set goals. So we're setting goals here as students, and we want to achieve them. So if we're able to, then our mental health is in a good place, so it's sound. It's also our ability to feel and express and manage positive and negative emotions. Many times we think that if our mental health is sound, we shouldn't experience negative emotions. No, we can experience negative emotions, but know how to manage them. And then sound mental health is our ability to cope with and then manage change and uncertainty in our lives. Often I make reference to COVID. COVID came, it just came out of the blue, and we didn't know what we're doing. There's so much uncertainty in the world, but we managed, we coped, we adapted to this uncertainty in our lives. So as I mentioned earlier, the occasional experience of sadness, fear, anger, it's fine. It's inevitable in everyday life, but we should be able to manage the negative emotions as well as the positive emotions. And I must mention also that if we're not able to manage our positive emotions, I mean, if you think about people laughing, walking in the streets and laughing, and there's no obvious reason why they're laughing, we tend to think, their mental health is not sound. So if we're able to manage these emotions, then we're talking about sound mental health. So on the flip side, what is bad mental health? It means that we are not able to think, feel, and behave appropriately. We are not able to learn, we're not able to adapt to change, and we're not able to cope with adversity. And then we experience distress, and our functioning is impaired. Our functioning, whether academically, occupationally, socially, interpersonally, intrapersonally as well, is impaired. Our functioning is poor. And once functioning is poor, it's going to affect our productivity at school. As students, we're not able to learn as well as we'd like. We're not able to even remember the things we've learned. I'm told you have an exam, you have your exams coming up. If you're not able to remember what you've learned, then your mental health might not be in a good place. The productivity might also be affected at work, and then we're unable to maintain relationships, or we form unhealthy relationships when our mental health is bad or it's not sound. So what are the things that can affect your mental health? We have childhood abuse, neglect, or very bad things that happen to you from childhood right up to adulthood. These things remind you of the pain, the emotional issues that you faced, and these can affect your mental health in later life. Stress is the major factor in poor mental health. Then our lifestyle choices. What do we do for fun? How do we work? How do we play? Because we're looking at our thinking, we're looking at our feelings, our behaviors. What kind of feelings do we experience when we engage in certain lifestyle choices? What kind of behaviors do we display? All these are factors that can affect the state of our mental health. And then if the workplace issues, I talked about forming relationships, and being able to function. If we're not able to relate positively with our colleagues at work or our mates at school, we might have poor mental health. Then, of course, financial problems. Now, the dollar is just, we don't know what's going on. And many people are experiencing financial problems at this point. So, of course, they may have issues with their mental health at this moment. Then, very importantly, personality disorders. We may not go into detail, but then there are some personalities that are prone to poor thinking, bad emotions, and then bad behaviors. The personalities themselves make these people prone to the negative effects of what they do and how they feel. So these things we might touch on later. So I want us to watch a video, and hang on, I'm not very tech savvy here, but let me see if I can just play it. Just give me a minute. Okay.
Stress is a part of life, and it's not always a bad part of life. Most of us enjoy good stress in small doses, like roller coasters, watching sports, or even a scary movie. That's the kind of stress that keeps us young and on our toes. Then there's bad stress, or worse, chronic stress. Negative stress isn't just in your head. It can affect us both mentally and physically. Stress hormones in the body for extended periods of time can physically age our cells. So when you're stressed at work or home, your cells look and act older, making you look older and even impacting your immune system. Not only does it add years to your appearance, it can also affect your memory, making brain cells shrink permanently. Even short-term stress can make it hard for you to remember simple things. The good news is you can manage stress now to prevent more damage to your body and mind tomorrow. Stress management is a skill that can be learned. Check out Luke Casey's Tips to Manage Stress video for ways to beat stress for a longer, healthier, and happier life.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
so this was a little icebreaker, I promise, from the start. So here we have an idea of what stress is. We're told that it's a normal thing, an everyday thing that we usually experience, but it is a state of worry. So if you feel that you're challenged by something, you might experience some stress. As soon as we feel pressured, we say we're stressed. But the stress actually is good for us. It prompts us to address the challenges and threats in our life. And it helps us also to work. If we're not stressed, if we're crossing the road and we're not stressed about the traffic, we might just walk into the road and be knocked down. And funny thing is, there's more, the negative effects of stress is higher in women than in men. Why? I think we can figure that out because women have other things that they do, and prolonged stress can lead to burnout. So we know now that stress is one of the things that affects our mental health, and it's directly linked to how our body also functions. So we're talking about a sound mind and how it relates to a sound body. Stress, number one. Okay, so in the video, we heard about the good stress and the bad stress. And we know that when we are distressed, we're experiencing pain, we're experiencing depression, anxiety, or even the thoughts that keep coming up to us. But then again, there's the good stress. The good stress is what helps us to be positive or to remain positive, to look forward to things like the footballers experience stress just before the World Cup or the African Cup or something, or even before we get married. The kind of stress or pressure we feel is known as eustress. And these things are normal in everyday life. Okay, but then we have said that stress can affect our mental health. How? And we have some stresses identified. Some are environmental or situational, others are the personality types I mentioned, others might be our lifestyle choices. So if we're looking at environmental situations, if we live in a crime-riddled area, or if we're living in poverty, or even if you're working in a dangerous profession, let's say the military or firefighting, or even emergency room doctors, the environment or the situation they find themselves in increases their stress levels. So these are stresses for them. Then I talked about the personality types. We know that the type A personality type is supposed to be constantly, stressed because they want things done. Their work and results oriented, so then their stress levels are usually up. Then we also have the biological things. If you're living with medical conditions, chronic illness, it can cause stress. And then our lifetime experiences also, such as being in an unhappy marriage or in an abusive relationship. Every day you leave your workplace and you're thinking about home and how horrible home is, and you wish you could stay at work forever or in your classroom forever. These things are stresses and can increase your stress levels. Okay, so what happens when we find that we are stressed? The definition said when our minds and bodies feel like we cannot cope, we either go into what we call a fight mode, a flight mode, or a freeze mode. There's even what we call a fawn mode, where you're all over people and trying to people please in order to get out of the stress. So these are what we call the stress responses, fight, flight, and freeze. And when we look at this table, I've highlighted some of them. When we're in a fight mode, because we feel so stressed and we need to do something about it, like the type A personality types, we need to do something about the stress. We become combative. If it's a woman, we might find ourselves screaming because we are very stressed. Or we become very defensive. We can't take any criticism, even if it's supposed to be helping us. We become defensive and then we react. We might also decide to flee or go into flight mode. And in that flight mode, we become very anxious. We start to procrastinate, especially when it's exam time and we have a paper to submit. And then we say, we will do it. We will do it. When the time is right, I will do it. And I want it to be just right. And I want to get an A. That is a flight response. Or then there's the freeze response where, because we haven't even done what we said we're going to do, we procrastinated too long, we now become overwhelmed, and then we might shut down. So this is what stress can actually cause us to engage in. So what is happening when we say we are stressed? And the stress is in the mind, it's an emotion. How is it affecting our bodies? Well, at the time that the mind perceives that we are stressed, that we cannot cope with this, or we're too challenged beyond our resources, certain chemicals, hormones are released into the body. And these carry messages to our organs, to other parts of our body. So for instance, they tell our body, you're supposed to run, you're supposed to fight this danger, or this is how you're supposed to handle the situation. Okay. Now we have the endorphins. These are hormones or neurotransmitters that are released. And when they do come into our bloodstream, during the time of stress, we actually start to feel a little bit better. I'm a little bit more relaxed. So let's say when we're eating a good meal after a hard day at work, the endorphins are working to calm us down. Even having sex after a hard day at work helps you. Then there's cortisol. Cortisol, it's good and it's bad in the sense that it increases the sugar in your bloodstream. So it energizes you to be able to fight or flee from danger. Then we are told that it also reduces inflammation, and then it suppresses certain processes while we are dealing with the stress. Adrenaline is also released into the bloodstream, and this is what we know, the adrenaline that makes us run. It increases our reaction time. Unfortunately, it also increases our blood pressure. Blood pressure going up is a good thing, because if you're not getting blood into your extremities, you're unable to run or fight or do whatever it is that will help you survive. So these hormones are secreted into our bloodstream when we are stressed, and they either help us to fight the stressor or run away from the stressor, or at least deal with the stressor in some way. So these are the hormones that link the mind or the brain to the body. If they're not working properly, we will also not be physically fit enough to deal with life and the challenges that come in life. So this is what stress does to the body. I've mentioned that stress is not a physical thing. So we don't see stress. And this is the reason why many people need to check their stress levels. We don't see stress, but we see the effects of stress on the body. For instance, you have ulcer, and then the doctor will tell you, lower your stress levels. But then you don't see stress. You can't tell. It's not like a fever that you can measure with a thermometer, or blood pressure that you can measure with this thing. This is in here, affects our emotions. When I feel I'm overwhelmed, I'm probably going to feel anxious. I'm going to feel sad, and I might also withdraw. So this is what stress does to the body. I hope you can see. It affects practically every organ in your body. It affects your skin, your nervous system, your brain. You may find that you're breathing faster. You start getting worried. These are the short-term effects, actually. Breathing quickly, you're finding that you're getting digestive issues. Your skin is becoming sensitive and oily. You will notice it, or even dry. Then with the men, there's a problem between the sheets, because if our stress levels are too high, we are seriously unable to rise to the occasion. So then you may have men coming in here telling you that they have erectile dysfunction. And then the first question you ask them is, what is stressing you? And then we have our muscles tensing up, because we are being prepared. Remember the fight, flight response? We are being prepared to handle what we think we can't, either fight it or run from it. So our mind is preparing our body to handle the stress that way. Long-term effects of stress, you might develop some mental health problems such as constant anxiety or even panic attacks. You may have, like I said, skin conditions. So When women and men have acne, again, doctors, dermatologists will ask you, is something stressing you out? What is the connection between stress, which is from the mind, and your skin? So that's the link. If our mind is not in a good place, our body will have to bear the brunt of it. Then we have diabetes, because again, when in a fight or flight mode, remember the previous slide said insulin is released into the body. There is an increase in sugar. So now if we're constantly in stress mode, we may increase our sugar in our bloodstream, and then we develop type 2 diabetes. And then there may be fertility problems for both men and women. So we see the importance of lowering our stress levels, because these are the areas that become affected. So in a nutshell, we're looking at, for this quadrant of effects of stress that we cannot see, that's from the mind on the body. We may develop physical symptoms such as headaches. Like I said, frequent infections, your skin is affected. There's fatigue. You're constantly feeling tired, muscular tension. We don't see stress, but many times when we hold our necks like this in the office, or we have back pain, we go, yes, it's the stress at work. And then there's breathlessness. These are some of the physical symptoms. When we go to how it's affecting, our thoughts, we are looking at our ability to concentrate. That's impaired. We may start developing some memory lapses. And then we develop this kind of negativity about ourselves. I am not going to pass this exam. I didn't study enough, because we are stressed and we are unable to handle the stress. We haven't lowered our stress levels just before our examination. So then we may become negative. Then we may make hasty decisions. Hasty decisions, we haven't given those decisions much thought. So then we will experience issues. When we look at our emotions, we start to lose confidence in ourselves, and self-esteem takes a nosedive. We may become irritable, snapping at people because we're very stressed. And then we may become depressed because we're unable to make it. We're not able to make decisions. We're not able to handle the bad feeling inside, the low confidence inside. And then this will show in our behavior. If we're making hasty decisions, we might even become accident prone. We are not measuring distances, reaction time, everything is impaired. Then we may either eat too much or eat too little, and then develop sleep problems. And then, of course, the important thing, our sex drive will also go down. So first and foremost, we need to identify what is the stress in my life. If I know what is causing it, if it's my behavior of procrastinating, if it's my behavior of wanting things to be just perfect, if it's the way I feel about things that I have no control over. I don't have control over the storms that are coming. I can't be stressing over things I don't have control over. So first we identify the stresses. Then we have to accept responsibility. If we've been procrastinating, if we're perfectionists, if we waiting for things to be just right before we do them, we have to accept responsibility when we do not handling our assignments on time, when we are not productive at work. Some people say they work better in deadline mode. No, you're stressing yourself and you're harming your body. And then we have to adopt coping strategies. Proper coping strategies, not drinking or smoking or giving somebody else your assignment to do for you. Proper coping strategies. These are the things we do once we've identified the stresses in our lives. Sometimes, like I said, some things are beyond your control or you are overloaded with work. We can adopt some ways. We have to first either change the situation if we can, or change our reaction to the situation. It's always how we appraise it. If we feel that this is beyond us, we might not be able to do what is expected of us. So we have to be very mindful. Try and change the situation if you can. If I work late before I tackle my assignments, I might make mistakes. I might not be able to give up my best. Or I change my reaction to my results. Remember I said we take responsibility for our behaviors. So what we can also do is seek help. I understand that most of you are working and schooling at the same time, so you have a lot on your plate. it'd be good to ask friends to help out, and then we learn to break our tasks into little chunks, bite-sized chunks, or we get others to help by delegating. If we're perfectionists, we may not want people to help us, and that can be a problem in itself because we want it to be just right. We're not ready to settle for someone's help. It's something that increases our stress levels, and we should be mindful that if we want it to be just perfect, we might make mistakes. We might make hasty decisions, and then that will affect us. So we have to learn to relax. Again, in the beginning, I said the sound mental health or good mental health is our ability to set goals and achieve them. So of course, our goals must be achievable. They must be realistic, and that will reduce our stress levels. If I say I want to be the richest woman in Ghana in the next 10 years or in the next 5 years, then I must be prepared to go through a lot of stress. Of course, that goal may not be achievable. And then also, we should slow down from time to time. We should recognize that we're not so strong. We don't have everything. Recognize our strengths, recognize our weaknesses as well. And in doing so, we'll be taking good care of ourselves because we'll not be loading our bodies with too much. We'll not be loading our minds also with too much. But then, if after you've done all these things and stress is still persistent, you're waking up tired, you're waking up with a headache, you're not able to focus, you can't even remember whether you had breakfast or not. You become irritable with your workmates, with your children, with your family members. Then what next? Well, we've talked about the fight or flight response and the freeze response. And we've said that if stress is not controlled by the techniques that I outlined earlier in the slide before, like taking time to relax, if we're not bringing our stress levels down, there is going to be continued exposure to the very hormones that are meant for your survival, that are meant to help you fight or flee from perceived threats, which is the stressor. So if we are constantly in a state of stress, our body is also going to be at risk and will have more severe physical problems. Very, very important. So if we can't do all the other things or we've tried them and they're not working, I mentioned either change the situation or change your reaction to the situation. And we have this 4A model of stress management. We say we can either alter the stressor, avoid it, adapt to it, or if we can't change it at all, accept it. And I usually use the example of people who have to be in traffic, say from Community 25 into Accra. You can't avoid the traffic, or from Bokwasi to Accra. So what do? You can alter how you deal with it. You see, you can tell people that I can't do this. I have to lower my expectations, or give me more time. So you're altering how you normally would do it, because right now you're experiencing stress. Or you can try and avoid it if you can. And avoiding as students would be doing assignments on time, or delegating, or breaking them into little tasks. You can also adapt. Adapt is the standards you've set for yourself. Remember, I talked about realistic goals. You have to adapt those goals a bit to fit in with your current state, so that your mental health is not affected and consequently your physical health. And then if you can't change it, then you would have to accept the situation. Or you can actually use all 4 if it helps you reduce your stress levels. So to recap all that we've learned, I want us to watch another video. Sometimes these visual effects help us more with retaining information. So let's watch this video.
Whether it's tears falling down our cheeks or a burst of laughter, our emotions often evoke a physical response. You've probably experienced that wave of nausea before walking into a nerve-wracking interview, or a jolt of excitement before opening a Christmas present. But the quick flashes of emotion that we feel in our bodies in the spur of the moment are only a small part of how emotions impact our physical health. You may not realize it, but our emotions can affect our decision making at the moment, which can have a knock-on effect on our physical health. But just how deeply are our mind and body connected? How much does one affect the other? Our bodies respond to our emotional health in many ways. Let's have a look at what might happen when our mental health is in poor shape. When we're feeling worried or sad, our body's pH levels begin fluctuating. This can incite a physical response such as constipation, stomach ulcers, and sometimes insomnia or high blood pressure. Being constantly unhappy or stressed can also impact our immune system, which is why we seem to get more coughs and colds around exam time, or why we take longer to shake off infections when things are busy at work. And of course, if we're feeling moody or nervous, we're more likely to skip physical activities that are good for our body. And instead, those pesky temptations become harder to ignore. So we might reach for the ice cream or an extra glass of wine. And if we're really unhappy, with no idea what to do, we may even resort to liquor, tobacco, or other drugs, which is usually a recipe for disaster. Trying to choke back the tears takes a lot of energy, leaving you feeling drained, burdened, and even achy or sore. Anxiety causes a constant cloud of unease, fear, or worry, which makes our bodies release a steady flow of adrenaline, a chemical normally intended for quick reactions. Adrenaline generally leaves you jumpy, unable to relax, sweating, or even become frozen, unable to take action. You might have trouble sleeping, even if you're tired, and you might even need to use the toilet more frequently. Anger is another adrenaline-releasing emotion. That's why when angry, your muscles tense and your breathing speeds up. Without being expressed, adrenaline causes long-term tension. If it's not released, you could end up exploding in a rage or smaller, unpredictable outbursts. These fits of emotion can put you at a greater risk of a heart attack, so make sure to express your anger in a healthy way, which can range from writing down your emotions in a journal to hitting a punching bag at the gym. Experiencing constant anger can also restrict your breathing, which makes you prone to respiratory problems. Other emotions we should take into account are shame and guilt. These often result in a feeling of butterflies or weight in the stomach. That's not too bad, but if we keep it up for long enough, it can turn into nausea and ongoing stomach problems. It's not all bad news though. There are also long-term physical benefits associated with emotional impact too. When feeling happy, your heart rate and breathing can improve. And most important of all, it causes the brain to release more endorphins and dopamine, our happiness chemicals. Falling in love not only makes you feel relaxed and content, but surprisingly, it's also thought to boost the growth of new brain cells, which helps improve our memory. While having too much adrenaline in our body can be quite damaging, short bursts of it can actually be a good thing. A little dose of adrenaline can momentarily heighten the senses, improve breathing, boost the immune system, and null pain. This is why some people enjoy fear-provoking activities like extreme sports, haunted houses, or scary movies. The natural high produced by that quick adrenaline hit not only feels fantastic, but it can also leave you with a sense of confidence. As we have seen, emotions have a big role in our physical health. The elements we've talked about can be helpful signals that something isn't quite right with our emotional health. If we start listening to our bodies, we can start taking action to improve our mental well-being. On your next visit to the doctor, make sure to talk about your physical symptoms and any feelings or problems you may be experiencing in your life. You might not be used to talking about these things, but it's important you do so that your doctor can take them into consideration when deciding the best course of action for you. A healthy mind promotes a healthy body. We hope.
Hey, so I hope that this video has been helpful, and we want to protect what we already have. So like I said, we want to talk about our feelings to people who are trained to help you. They are not going to take your issues outside. We also want to ask for help from our friends, our colleagues. We want to keep ourselves active. If we're going to just get home and lie down, we're going to put on weight. That's going to cause us some anxiety and some depression. So we want to keep ourselves active. Take walks, those breaks that were advised in earlier slides. Take a break, take a walk. Then also try and eat and drink sensibly. Keeping in touch with friends and family is a great boost to your mental health. Even just sending a WhatsApp or an emoji once in a while, it's fun. Sometimes it's fun for me to look up nice stickers or just to send to friends. And then take up a hobby or rediscover a hobby you used to have and engage in it. Most importantly, you have to accept who you are. So we want you to care for yourself. We want you to care for others. We want you to make your mental health a priority, remembering that you can always go into a medical facility and ask for a psychologist, ask to check your mental health. I mentioned earlier that we can't see stress. We cannot see depression. We can't see anxiety. There are no machines that measure these things. But then we do have tests, paper and pencil tests, that will tell you that your stress is in the normal range or is moderate to severe. These are your own self inventories that you carry out, that I feel a little bit more irritated today than I did a week ago. These things are important. Check your anxiety levels, check your depression levels. That way, if you know that you're within the normal ranges, just like when you check your physical health, and you are told you fall in the normal range or the stress is mild, you know you will be able to cope with uncertainty. You know that should adversity come, you will be able to manage your emotions. You know that you'll be able to control the amount of adrenaline and cortisol and the other hormones that we release into our bloodstream when we are feeling stressed. And in that case, we will be able to avert all the negative effects of an unhealthy mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, May. Thank you for that expose. You touched upon so many things that we as students, we as people, adult students are probably going through right now. You spoke about procrastination. I think that's my middle name. And just hearing you talk about it brings up the awareness that it's important to manage all those things. And indeed, your presentation reminds us that our minds are really the engines of our bodies, and that once you take care of the engine, you take care of the body. Thank you so much, and I hope, like I did, I got a lot out of this, and I hope that our audience also did get a lot out of this. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand and we will give you the floor. And if anyone wants to put their question in the chat as well, that is fine. But I really got a lot out of this, and perhaps I can ask you the first question, May.
Okay.
Maybe, oh, okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is May's Counseling and Psychological Support Center. It's a beautiful center. You will feel very much at home if you do have any family members that need her services further. Now, I want to ask you, in our Ghanaian context or in our African context, there's a huge stigma. You mentioned the stigma earlier. Yeah. About mental health issues. The moment somebody is a little off, but I imagine that it's it's a progressive thing where somebody can start off with these stresses, it will affect their bodies, but sometimes the mental part of it is also getting worse as the
Yes.
the physical as well. Now, what would you suggest we do as a country to overcome some of these social stigmas and to accept, like in what you were saying earlier today, you said accept yourself, accept that stress is perfectly normal. It's just that it cannot go beyond a certain range, because when it does, it's creating all kinds of problems. How do we as a society then, move away from this stigma of mental health issues, so that when we notice signs of problems in our loved ones, in our close relationships, we can point them in the right direction in a way that would not offend them? What do you say about that?
Okay, thanks, Sako. That's a very important question. And that is what this month has been about. So a couple of weeks ago, we actually had a free screening, mental health screening done here. It hadn't been done anywhere. We tried it here just to destigmatize mental illness. And like I said, you see that the terms I use, what's the word I'm looking for? Interchangeably, mental health and mental illness, right? But then mental health is what I've just talked about, your levels of depression or anxiety or stress, so just the same way that somebody's blood sugar is rising, right? And you want them to go and take a test because of the genetic components. They now know how to change their lifestyle, make proper lifestyle choices, good lifestyle choices, right? So knowing that the mental illness is not walking about stark naked, or mental health is not about walking about stark naked. It's about how depressed you are, or how anxious you are, or how much you procrastinate. And when you do procrastinate, you do get anxious, and then your anxiety levels will go up. Remember, we have the fight or flight response to help you deal with these things. So I talked about the prolonged stress. It will give you issues. So when we tell people out there that, I was experiencing anxiety, a lot of it, I didn't even realize they were high. My anxiety level was high, or my stress level was high. I went and checked. So why don't you also go and check? If you are saying something like that, you might even help the person to get it, that there is no stigma attached to just checking your stress level. Honestly, the people who first walked in here, we were very proud of them for breaking that stigma, making, the steps they took to enter this facility, because it was said free mental health screening. Everybody's wondering what's going on. I'm not mad. That was the response I was getting from people. I am not mad. There's nothing wrong with me. But those who came in realized that, oh, it's good to check my level, because then I know not to get so angry, not to get so worked up, not to procrastinate in the things that I have to do. Otherwise, my levels will go up. So for those who may be experiencing these things, for all you know, this is what's wrong with them. They're not sleeping well, they're eating too much, or sleeping too much, or making mistakes, or looking depressed. Encourage them. Let's go and check. Okay. It's not all mental illness.
Okay. Thank you. So, what do you look for? What do you test for? Is it a real? Do you take blood and look at something in the blood, or is it just by talking to the person that you are able to screen and find out their stress level? I'm curious about that aspect of it.
Okay, that also worries people, because they think it's a blood test.
Oh.
I think there are just about 2 or 3 mental health disorders, illnesses that are discovered by blood tests. The rest are all pencil and paper. So that's why I said it's your own subjective rating. We want to know about the frequency, the duration, and the severity of whatever it is you're feeling. So then most of our tests are scales. They're on a Likert scale, with 1, a little bit, 2, quite a bit. This is your subjective rating of how you're feeling. If you're having breathlessness, or you become very irritable, you are stating it, that it's on a 4 or it's on a 3, because we can't see your stress. We can't see your anxiety, but we can't see what you've put down. And that will give us an indication of how depressed you are. Or that's why I talked about the ranges. The same way lab tests, you go to take a lab test, they'll give you a range. You fall within the range, you're fine. If it goes above, you will see a little H on the side. If it's below, if there's an L on the side. It's the same with psychological tests for your mental health. We want to know how you're feeling. And if you're a little bit above, the normal range, then these are the tips. But if it's way beyond, then that is when we will look at maybe medication. And even then, it's a far cry from what you walked in with, So for medication to be given, you really must have some serious issues. But as we're talking about a sound mind for a healthy body, a sound mind and sound body, we're looking at just these things that we need to bring down. And lifestyle choices and exercise and these things actually help.
Okay, I lost myself. Hello?
Yeah, hi.
Okay. One second. Yes. Thank you so much for that response. To cover for possible power outage or internet signal loss, I have myself on twice, and so I've switched to backup plan. And I want to thank you for that response. Question about whether it was possible to do a remote screening from afar. I think so. In order to check your mental health, can you do it remotely?
Yes, we can. Okay, observations help, the actual observation, because nonverbals are very important as well. Body language tells us a lot, But for people who can't make it in person, like I said, it's pencil and paper. So I can ask you the questions and then I will circle your responses and I can still give you a report. So yes, remote testing is possible. So long as you start feeling that you're a little stressed or you're not sleeping well, all the things that we outlined in the quadrants, the body, mind, emotions, and behavior. If you're feeling any of these things, please reach out, even if it's via Zoom.
Okay. Thank you. I had to take myself off video. Now, in your presentation, you mentioned avoidance as one of the coping mechanisms for handling stress. Don't you think avoidance could become eventually a problem? Because if somebody is constantly avoiding something, wouldn't they get to a point where they would explode?
That's the thing. We talked about their responses, the stress response, the fight, flight, and the freeze, right? And the flight may be that you're avoiding or you're withdrawing, But then don't forget that even in those instances, your body is still releasing some chemicals. So you may find that you are withdrawing, you are not fighting, you are avoiding, but it doesn't mean that the problem is going away. You get it? If, for instance, I have a pile of work to do and I'm avoiding the work, what happens? My anxiety levels will go up. I will become very stressed. And because I know that the work is piling up and I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to start feeling depressed. You see, so you look at what it is. If it's something that you can avoid, let me just talk about this. At a certain point in time, we sometimes become so engrossed in, let's say, social activities, right? There's a funeral here, next week there's a wedding, there's a school reunion here, there's this happening. There are certain things we should avoid, and it will not be such a bad thing. You see, these things are also adding to our stress. So if we can avoid them, we do. So the things that are adding to our stress levels, we make a conscious effort to either avoid them, alter them, adapt them, or maybe if we can't, we accept. But it's important to check what it is you are avoiding. If it's affecting your health, if it's affecting your stress level, go for avoidance. It's a good thing. But if it's your work, if it's your assignments that you are avoiding, then of course your stress levels will go up. And so you have to deal with it. Break it into chunks, ask for help. I don't know if this has answered your question, Anushka.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I was thinking of avoidance in a way where there's a stressor who is constantly perhaps causing us stress.
Mm.
And so sometimes instead of dealing with that, or if you are somebody who deals with things by avoiding them,
Mm.
then that may not necessarily be a good thing.
Mm.
Because you have to deal with it
You
eventually.
have to deal with it. Yes.
Dr. May, I have a comment which says mental checks in schools should be normalized because education is a stressor. What do you say about that?
I believe that 100%. You see, education, remember we're supposed to use what we are learning to achieve our goals, right? But then I mentioned things that can affect how you do these things. Okay, if I have had trauma or I am dealing with a chronic illness, it's going to affect how I learn. So if there is a system in a school to help with these things, it reduces, you're checking, you're knowing that, okay, I shouldn't go above this limit. I should try and bring it down. Because education, indeed, we have to set goals and achieve them. And that can be very stressful. And if the conditions for my learning are not adequate, it will affect the goals that I set for myself and even how productive I am. So if we have centers in schools like that where students can just walk in to check, it's not about mental illness, it's about being productive. Tell yourself that I'm going to check, not because I'm mentally ill, but I want to get an A, or I want to do this. Yes. If we start thinking that way, I talked about the erectile dysfunction, and I know a lot of men always go, oh, they didn't realize that. But it does, and it hits them because they do not want to experience that. But what happens when you're not checking your stress level and your blood pressure goes up, and unfortunately you suffer a stroke or a heart attack? What happens? They put you on medication, and then your sex drive will be affected, and then you will not be able to perform. So don't you think it would have been smarter if you were checking your stress levels in order to bring it down to the normal level? So this is the kind of education we want to put out there. Don't wait till you have developed an ulcer for the doctor to tell you it was your stress or your blood pressure to go up, to be told that you worry too much or you put things aside too much. Don't wait for that. Be mindful that if I procrastinate, I am going to raise my anxiety level and I will not even perform well.
Wow. Does anybody else think you so? That is such that's a way of sort of flipping the script and looking at the whole thing from a totally healthier point of view. Because, like you said, stress is part of life. We will have stress, but there's good and there's bad stress.
Yes.
So that we want to recognize when we're having bad stress, and we want to know what to do about it in order for it not to have long-term effects upon our health. That's what I got from this. And I think that is very useful information. If anybody else has a question, the floor is open. I think Dr. May did a great job in letting us be aware of some things that you probably already kind of know, but not quite in the way that has been, presented today. And for that, we're very grateful. Does anybody else have another question? Okay, if they don't, Oh, yes. Dr. Emmanuel Tega, you have the floor. Please unmute and go ahead.
Yes, Dr. May, thank you very much for your presentation. I hope I'm being heard.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Yes,
I just want to add some perspective to what he's saying as a medical doctor.
Okay.
What Dr. Wolf is saying applies even in the physical side. People don't come for regular checkup. Checkup is not part of our testing. When somebody comes for checkup and you touch them, they think you have done nothing. Oh, me call hospital, so people don't come for checkup, even for the physical side. Somebody's father died of stroke or hypertension or diabetic. The family members are ignorant. Those who know don't care. They won't come. If they come and you want to charge them, so that's one side of the story. So it's not only the stigma, it's not only mental. People think it's only mental, but from my experience, even it's also the physical side, in a sense that people don't believe. So it's more of societal mindset change than anything else. So it's the same thing that we think mental health is when you are on the streets, naked, and you are eating from the rubbish down. The same way is when somebody is obviously diabetic or has a stroke, then we think that that is when the person is sick. So we don't believe that we can check the blood and pick things up. That is one of the main problems. The other thing I want to add is that people don't link the mental, social, and physical also. We are not taught in our schools, we are not taught. In our theological schools, we are not taught. In our universities, we are not taught that the three entities affect one another. That you can, if your heart is beating, people come to hospital and you start asking about social dimensions, spiritual dimensions, or psychocultural dimensions, they won't give you any answer. They're wondering, why is it asking me? I say, I'm complaining that my heart is beating. It's asking me about my marriage. It's asking me about divorce. It's a whole societal thing, and I don't know how together we can address it. So people will come. So you mentioned that it's a social WHO definition, the state of complete physical, social, mental, psychological well-being, but also it's not that. Then the last thing I want to end, being a Christian institution, is that I see, for example, Philippians 4:8 tells us how we should think. Say, whatever things are pure, whatever things are just, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are worthy of praise, we should think on those things. We are commanded to have the mind of Christ. What is the mind of Christ? Then as I was teaching my students, I told them, if you look at the Beatitudes, it's actually B-attitudes. B attitude. B means what? Become. By having these attitudes. So it says, so if you have a heart, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek, blessed are the gentle, blessed are those who are merciful. If people have that kind of attitude, then a lot of the things that you talk of will be, because if I'm merciful, then I will not be stressed by somebody talking rubbish to me, a colleague at the workplace. I will have social listen. I'll be able to know how to deal with my wife and my husband, my listen. So all the things you mentioned can be addressed through that dimensions, and that's what I think I'm trying to tell my students, that there's a special dimension to it, which is the psychological. So I thought I should just ask this perspective, since we are in a short university college, it has a Christian focus, so that we can then look at it this way. But I don't know what Dr. Wolf thinks.
It's very, very true.
Let me just ask something also for you. How is it that when in our hospitals we are going on ward rounds, the clinical psychology don't affect us, because I work in the hospital where I function as a counselor rather than a doctor. So I'll go on rounds with the doctors as a counselor, working with the UN. I moved from doctor being a counselor. Then after the doctors are gone, having listened to all the issues, I'll then go to the patients. And then I start dealing, if the person doesn't want to do HIV test, how do I address that immediately? So I think we should work more together rather than something that we call you come and see our patient, then you leave, and then so I'm just thinking some long-term or medium-term perspective.
That's a good idea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a very good idea.
Thank you, Dr. Chega. Thank you for that contribution. Dr. Chega and I used to also work for the UN, and May talked about how, long-term stress can have an effect. And I remember when I was living in that country, they were in full-blown war. It was a war situation. And I remember always, I never knew I was under stress till I left the borders of that country. Then I felt this incredible peace, and I felt this relaxation, and I felt this whatever. And without actually knowing what I was doing, I allowed myself only 3 months to be there at a time when they were at war. Because anything more than 3 months was just too much for me. And I had to take a break. I had to go somewhere and recharge myself and come back into that environment. Because unbeknownst to me, I was feeling a stress, and I only knew it when I was no longer in that environment. How would you address something like that in everyday life?
Yes, so I talked about the short breaks. The short breaks are very, very important. You move away from what you're doing, or like I said, break your work into chunks. So always leave a little time for a breather. These days when I talk at institution organizations, I talk about going back to, remember the hobbies, rediscover hobby. I encourage people to even play ampe, just ampe, jump about a bit. It loosens the body. That mind and body connection starts to work again in a good way. So you go back and you continue what you were doing. One of the videos, it talked about how the eustress and these things, and sometimes the stress, the fear is even good for us. And I'm reminded of when we were kids and we're watching things that were scary. Sometimes we knew it was scary, and then we go like, because we still want to watch it. The adrenaline is pumping in us. Anything that would keep that happening is fine. So if it means go out, play Ludo, just do the rounds. Some organizations have gyms there. Now we talk about punching a bag. Even here in our office, we have a punching bag for when clients come in and they want to get rid of some of the adrenaline that's pent up in them. You need to take those breaks so that whatever it is you have built up in you will kind of dissipate. Dr. Chega, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you need to move some of these hormones out of your system. We got the buildup of it because it was made for us to either fight or flee or run from what is perceived as a stressor or a threat to our system. So if you're not really in danger, or you can handle it, at least get rid of what you've accumulated somehow.
So thank you so much, May. And going back to what Dr. Chega said about possibly having a situation in the hospitals where the clinical psychologist and the doctor are together addressing, it will be probably in a private clinic where you pay an arm and a leg to get that kind of attention, but definitely not in our public hospitals. But I think that he has a great point of view.
Yes, I think it's a brilliant idea as well, because we have psychologists in most hospitals now, and the whole idea is to bring them on board, to also get, even when it comes to even compliance with medications. Sometimes you want, Doc was saying that they won't
Yes.
take the medicine or they won't go, you know. So the psychology is also coming in from that angle, that it's not about this, and it's not because your family members are doing this to you or that kind of thing. That's what we are trying to do, to talk to people, to make them understand the importance of mental health, not in terms of mental illness. You know what I mean? So even with, let's say, even with erectile dysfunction, sorry if I seem to be going back there, but the thing is, even with that, because men usually don't like complaining, is when that happens, again, you're still thinking somebody has done that to you. You know, so if the psychologist is with you and we're talking about the social, the spiritual, and the mental, as well as the physical aspects of what is going on with you, I think we will get the message across even quicker. We will disseminate that information much better.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? Okay, I've already asked most of my questions already. I normally tend to prepare my questions just in case people don't have questions, but I think that is a testament to how clear your presentation was made.
Thank you.
And how very to the point and your presentation was, and I want to thank you very, very much for that. And if anybody else has a question, this is a good time to lift up your hands and ask them. Otherwise, I would say that I would want to thank Dr. May Kabuki. I say Kabuki because, like I said, I don't want people to think you're some Dutch lady who's here talking to us. Dr. May Kabuki Wolf-Caesar, for this wonderful presentation, for this reminder, for giving us this new perspective on how to look at our mental health and the connections with our physiological health, and how it's important to track or keep track of both, so that we can have that balance in life, a healthy mind in a healthy body, a sound mind in a sound body. And Dr. Chega reminded us of the Bible verse in Philippians that said we should think of those things that are positive, that are good report, that are of virtue, so that we would have and maintain that healthy mind. Now, I'm going back to the chat, and a couple of people have put in some comments. One of them is from Matilda, who says, "Thank you, Dr. May." Then our registrar, Mr. Michael Amma, is saying, "Hello, our guest seminars take place monthly." Somebody was asking how often we have these talks. Yes, we do have these talks every month, and they are very educational. Thank you so much. Yes, that was it from the chat group. Now, is Prophet Godwin Safo on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Before you close us, can I ask, does anybody else have anything else to say other than thank you, Dr. May?
I wanted to find out if there's a single benefit of stress, just one benefit of stress.
May, Dr. May?
Hello?
Yes. One of our guests is, one of our students is asking whether can you point to a single benefit of stress?
Hello?
Hello, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
So
yes.
one of our students asked if you can point to a single benefit of stress. I think you touched upon it.
Yes, so there are quite a few. You know, stress is what keeps us going. Stress is what motivates us to work. How many times have you seen friends during exam time who were chilling and listening to music and didn't seem stressed at all? You always felt there was something wrong with them. So stress is what gets us to learn. Stress, as I mentioned, is the reason why we're very mindful when we're crossing the road. Stress is why we want to keep deadlines. Stress is why we check our physical health and everything, because we do not want to be overtaken by things. So stress is what actually keeps us moving, keeps our heart pumping, keeps us in a good place, so long as it's within the normal limits.
Okay. So stress can be used to our positive benefit. And
Yes.
before, thank you. Before I let him close us, I want to say a big thank you once again, and I want to also acknowledge the presence of a few of our faculty members. I did mention the president of the university, which is Dr. Kojo Alabo. We also have the vice president, which is Dr. Fatima Alabo. I see Dr. Ambassador Novishi is on there. Dr. Kofi was here a moment ago. Dr. Chega also is one of our faculty members, and many other administration persons. Mr. Michael Ama, Registrar, I keep giving you the title doctor already. So you have to hurry up and get the title so that we can feel free and use it. So, Mr. Michael Amma, who is our registrar, and a few students have been here to listen to you. Thank you once again, and thank everybody for coming.
Thank you for inviting.
Thank you. We really appreciate it, and I hope if anybody needs Dr. May's services or needs her to talk to another group of people, you can either contact me or you would have seen her information on her screen. Now we'll ask Prophet Godwin to please close us in prayer, if nobody else has a question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Can you unmute Godwin?
Yes, I am unmuted.
Okay. Please proceed with your closing prayer.
Shall we pray then? Father, we thank you for your great hand upon Salt University College. We thank you for the life of faculty, students, and participants that engaged in this fruitful discussion. We thank you for our resource person, Dr. May. We ask, Lord, that you continue to expand our borders, continue to bless everyone that is involved in this program. We ask for grace to excel like never before. We want to be a holistic vessels for your usage. Give us the strength, give us the ability, give us the know-how so that we would be an example to these generations and the generations yet to come. Thank you for answered prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so very, very much for that prayer. And thank you once again to Dr. May Wolf-Caesar. Thank you to everybody who made the time at such a crucial time to be here with us, especially for our students. So we've learned that we shouldn't procrastinate, that we should do things in moderation. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.